Welcome, everybody, and good evening. If we could call this meeting to order, and if we could please start with a moment of silence for prayer or reflection. Thank you. If we could start with a roll call by the city clerk of those on the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have
I'll ask those on the line to please mute your phones, and we will give you ample time to speak if you so desire.
okay, moving on to adoption of the agenda. I do have one item to add, so that'll be item 9.1, and it's Unit 17, electric generation.
Any other additions? Seeing none, we'll accept the agenda.
Next, we have adoption of the minutes. Item 3.1, you'll find our meeting minutes from July for approval from council.
I move this development permit.
Second.
We are required to have a non-statutory public hearing, and so I will ask if anybody would like to come forward and speak for or against. Please come down or state your name, or if you're on the line, please state your name. I'll ask a second time if anybody would like to come forward and speak for or against. Please step forward, or if you're on the line, please speak up. And a third and final time if anybody would like to speak for or against. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from council on this matter? Councillor McIntosh?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a quick question regarding what this business actually does. It's identified as non-destructive examinations, which includes industrial radiography. So I'm just looking for some higher level understanding of what's going to be taking place here.
Does anybody? Councillor?
Can you put the mic on, please?
It's a specialized, sorry. Go
Okay,
ahead.
that sounds like Councillor Schwarzenberger on the line. Commission, sorry. Yeah.
As a member of MPC, Councillor Vargan, I listened to the explanation, and in fact, they did indicate that their customers don't come to them, they go to the customers. So, and in fact, there wouldn't be that many Medicine Hat. They actually roam around, basically doing examinations, as it was explained a little bit here, in terms of radiography. So essentially what's happening is that it'll be considered a shop for their equipment, plus some offices.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that was, Councillor Dumont, that was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along now to reports. Our first report's item 5.1, Energy and Utilities Committee meeting, and this was just for information with a motion to close.
So moved.
I'll second that.
If we could call the vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Our next report's item 5.2, the Public Services Committee meeting of July 13th, with the Arts and Heritage Advisory Board goals for 2020 for information.
I'll move that report for information.
Can you get a seconder?
Second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wonder how, and I read it over and over and over, and I just love maybe you had a different explanation in your committee meeting as to what it entails. Maybe somebody can help me out on that, understand it better.
Councillor Samraj?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the representative on that committee. I think with the goal of that committee, and they spend a lot of time discussing it, is trying to make arts and heritage more central to all the discussions that we have. Because I mean, the conversation we have is about defining culture as kind of any activity that people get together. We think of it as a kind of very narrow thing, as maybe something that only happens within the walls of the Esplanade. But their idea of culture is something that's a little, a lot more immersive and just organic there. And so they want to kind of educate the public on all those different aspects of culture that we currently don't think of as culture.
Okay, yeah, it's lofty goals again, as said, right, with this committee, and I hope they can achieve some of those goals. So I was just wondering what that meant, and I'm sure there was an explanation behind it.
I think all the advisory committees, they have lofty goals because the people, the volunteers on those committees are deeply passionate about those particular issues that they work on.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, if we could call the question, all in favor? That was unanimous, thank you.
Our next report's item 5.3, Corporate Services Committee meeting July 14th. Again, just for information on the notice to close.
So moved.
If we could vote, all in favor? That was unanimous, thank you.
Item 5.4 is the Administrative Committee meeting of July 15th. This is for adoption and information. The adoption items are the sale of 440 Maple Avenue Southeast, the former Fire Station Number 1, to the Medicine Hat District Food Bank, and the second adoption item is Bylaw 4633, closure and sale of road allowance adjacent to 901 13th Street Southwest.
So if we could maybe, sensing that there may be some discussion on item number 1, if we could split that one out and deal with it first, and then vote on it, and then we'll deal with item 2 and 3 post. The council's okay with that?
So moved.
Okay. Okay.
Second,
All in
as
favor?
amended.
All in favor? Yeah, just splitting, yeah. Everybody okay with splitting in favor? That was unanimous. So we'll deal with item number 1 first, if anybody would like to speak for or against. Councillor Samrash?
Thank you, Mayor Tluxton. I do have some concerns about the sale of the fire hall to the food bank. I live near downtown and I'm on the board of the CCDA, and I've thought a lot about the challenges of the downtown neighborhood. And I've come to the conclusion that one of the main issues is the concentration of social services there. And I would hope the council would begin to have a conversation about the impacts to a neighborhood that accompanies social developments. I think right now we have not been very intentional about where we locate social services, and rarely does council have a chance to manage this issue. But in this case we do, because it is a public property there. I do love the direction of the food bank and their goal to create a community hub that's dedicated to food security. Food security will be a real issue that's been worsened by the pandemic, but I just don't feel that this is the right location. The counter argument might be like, if you say not here, then where? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think right now council is just reacting to these deals as they come forward instead of showing some leadership and talking about some of these challenges that actually do there, and acknowledging that there is problems that come along with some of these developments that do need to be talked about and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, well said. Councillor Varga?
And actually, I'm on the other foot where I think this is a great deal that's going to move forward, where it's an opportunity for the food bank to actually expand coming to their place. So I think they can control that a little bit, where they can manage some of the people that are coming to there. I mean, the people are around that area anyways. They're in that downtown core, they're across the tracks, they're in that area anyways right now. So what better way to control some of that by having this building being put up there, maybe putting some services in there that are essential for these people to learn by. So I think it's a good move. I think the opportunity is there to expand the services that they interested in putting this into that building and making a go of it. And I think it'll show its leaps and bounds as they move forward into the future as to how it's going to operate and how good it is going to be for our community. So I think it's a good news story right now that they're going to expand their process and their dealings with the people within our community that are in need of these services, and it's going to be a good thing for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Varga. Councillor McIntosh?
Thanks, Your Worship. This has been a difficult decision for me. The comments made by the previous councillors, I agree with both of them. And I'm going to add another aspect that I've struggled with. I just had a conversation with Ms. Simmons prior to this meeting, and she says she's got some unbelievable ideas for what could help that revitalization movement in this area. So that said, it is not an easy decision, but I will be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Dumanowski.
Well, Your Worship, like the other comments have been made, it's not a decision that comes without consideration. It's not lost on me that there's a tax-based component argument to be made here, but we also have to look at the social side of this decision and its in support, because it's a central location. That area, which is near and dear to my heart as well.
Announcing participant.
Is definitely focuses on redevelopment and developments. This one there's a cost to acquiring the property, but to redevelop it. And so we have tested the waters, if you will, and we haven't had anyone else excited to do anything with it. And I think it's maybe a foretelling of the appropriateness for the food bank being there. It's, as I said, central. It's in an area of the River Flats along Maple Avenue that has been zoned commercial over time. It fits the mandate, brings awareness, and a lot of the social aspects that people perhaps see as undesirable. I've yet to see that. In my time around this table, and in my years on the police commission, I can honestly say I've never heard of one complaint of not only where the existing food bank is, but where the new one will go. I think it brings awareness to not only the food bank and their mandate, it brings awareness to the community. And you know what? It's okay for people to drive by, take notice, and maybe be inspired to do something and do something more to support that group. I'm not saying this at any request of anyone. These are my own comments. When I work in a school setting by profession by day, we see a lot of families, and in our role as counselors, we encounter a lot of families who require and bank on the food bank for lots of things. And I know the ideas around their strategic plans for this facility and growing the food capacity and awareness is going to be exponential, and it's just going to become a focal point, I think, for our community in a bigger way than they've ever done before. There's not one building, not one institution during COVID that stayed open, other than health services to some limited way, than the food bank. My understanding is they were open daily to serve the community's needs. This is a group of people, a group of volunteers who have a passion for serving our community, and this location, in my opinion, expands on that and enhances their capacity to do a great thing for our community. And I believe it's most appropriate that they be located there, and I'm hoping that council will understand that in the same way and will support this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Dumanowski. Councillor Turner?
Thank you, Your Worship. This certainly has been a struggle for me to make a decision on this motion as well. The food bank certainly does awesome work in our community. In my days of being the manager there, I can certainly tell you they needed more space then, and they certainly need more space now. The one issue I did have is taking a prime piece of commercial real estate off a busy thoroughfare that probably could generate a lot of tax revenue over the years. Then you have to weigh against that the definite social benefit to our community. So as I said, I've thought long and hard about this, and so I've made my decision. I'm going to support the social need for our community, and I will be voting yes to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Turnbull?
Thank you, Your Worship. So first of all, I'd like to recognize the people in the audience from the food bank and the quality work that you do for our city and our citizens. But like several councillors, I do have concerns. And when we think back that our city is in financially fit in its 5th year, am I right, or 4th year? Our citizens' taxes are going up at a tremendously high rate. And council decided 3 years ago that we would take every piece of infill property to build our tax base so we could try to ease the burden of taxes to our citizen. So my decision is very difficult as well, because I don't just serve the interests of the food bank, and I know you guys do a great job. fantastic job, and we couldn't run our city without you. But I also have a responsibility to serve the taxpayers and the citizens of Medicine Hat who are, not just through COVID-19, but through our problems with the loss of oil and gas revenues, and that's affected our city's financial ability. So I am going to support it only because I want to see us be unanimous. But I do have my concerns. Had I been smarter, I would have brought this issue up some time ago so that we would have had this argument with councillors before, and we wouldn't have sent administration out to make a financial transaction with the food bank. So having said that, that transaction has been made based on council's approval at the time, and so I won't force administration to renegotiate or the food bank to renegotiate, but I do, like Councillor Turner, I think that that property could have been used for commercial. We could have employed people, maybe a lot of people. We did have an interest, by the way, before that would have employed quite a few people and would have paid full taxes on a $1.3 million plus whatever money they put into it. But nonetheless, I did want to make my comments known. And so my vote, even if I voted no, would not be a vote against the food bank. So please understand that there's a difference here between this piece of property, which I think is could be used for better results. But I will support it nonetheless.
Any other, Councillor Hirsch?
Well, Your Worship, not that I was purposely last, but you know, as an individual that is big on being physically hawkish, as I've been labeled, but we also have a social conscience to the community, and I actually do in my deliberations in terms of the ability of the food bank to exercise with excellence. I've had a lot of relationships and support of the food bank over the years. It does hold a little place in my heart. And you know what, it's because of the passionate volunteers, because it serves such a basic need of food. We're going through an economic downturn that for the most part is sustained for you know, numerous reasons. So the reality of the relevance of the food bank is more prevalent than ever. You know, I wouldn't necessarily weigh the applicant on a decision like that. I actually take Councillors Turnbull and Turner's comments to heart as well in terms of the economic footprint that could leave us in terms of a legacy of taxes. But again, as already mentioned, you weigh that with the social contribution that this organization gives. I also looked at the practical applications. It is on a major arterial road, so easy access to the patrons. Food bank definitely has outgrown their location. You know, and I think there was a couple comments in relation to, you know, where to put social agencies versus for-profits. And I'm a bit of a laissez-faire individual when it comes to if it makes sense for that organization, both profit or nonprofit, to rent, own, or lease a property. I don't necessarily need to get into their back pocket and try to impact where they go. We have municipal planning for that in terms of designations of classifications of commercial buildings, of residential, et cetera. So until we get to a point where and I think to the point that we talked about, we already had some discussions relative to downtown, but quite frankly, it isn't necessarily the organizations, it's the patrolling, and it's the responsibility of our society to make sure that if we have loitering, if we have commitments of or crime that has been committed, that we make sure that we patrol that as best we can and support our own community in terms of what we're doing. But again, I just want to leave in the fact that I will be supporting the sale to the food bank and wish them all the best in their future. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this? Item 1? All right, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? That was 7 in favor. All opposed? 1 opposed. That passes. Thank you. We have item 2 and 3 left on this. Any questions or comments on item 2 or 3? Road allowance and the tender recommendation. Councillor Samraj?
Thank you, Mayor Cluxton. Just a question for CEO Nicolay about the stormwater rehabilitation project. Has the city identified the areas of Medicine Hat that experience trouble with stormwater? I'm reminded of the news story that was here just a couple of weeks ago on the 300 block of 11th Street, Crescent Heights Northeast, and the troubles they're having there. Have we mapped out all these areas in the city?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. Commissioner Schwarzenberger has a response that I believe he's prepared on that question. Go ahead, Stan.
Thank you. The short answer is yes, through the chair. The city, through Municipal Works, is very aware of the areas that experience difficulties in storm events on a localized basis. The approach that we've been taking in conjunction with the municipal asset management strategy is to not only look at the systemic replacement of aging assets, but also look on a site-specific basis to see on a priority basis which areas need additional upgrading of capacity. That's what we're looking at with these 3 tender documents. We're looking at upgrading capacity in a local basis. The challenge that we've got, as might have been referenced on some other aspects, is we're in a period of austerity. We have been for a little while in terms of managing our asset backlog. So we really have to look at setting priorities. Now, the staff have been looking in areas where there is some specific concerns dealing not just with the land of the properties, but the buildings themselves, if there's impacts. We'll look to see if we can find some creative ways to address those specific issues, and we've done that in the past. We're embarking on a next version of those efforts in the coming weeks to see if we can look at some additional creative ways to manage that, involving more than just the Municipal Works Department, but possibly linking efforts of other departments as well. We've done that in the past with environmental utilities, where we try to determine through an environmental utilities project whether or not there's some synergies and benefits that can be created by piggybacking on their project to see if we can also address storm issues in the areas they're working in. Sometimes the business case makes sense. Sometimes it just doesn't pan out. But I hope that helps with a little bit of a description of the approach that we take.
Just a follow-up question for Commissioner Schwarzenberger. Thank you for that answer. I'm glad that the city has identified these areas that cause potential issues. Have we done anything to share this information with the public so that the people in these affected areas kind of understand that they are in prone areas? I understand that the city, has undertaken ambitious ways to deal with overland flooding from Mother Nature. This is a kind of man-made problem. But I wonder what efforts we've made to kind of communicate this information to the public.
Through the chair, I think there has been efforts made in the past. Has it been satisfactory or sufficient in the minds of maybe some property owners? I'm not sure. In conjunction with the communications strategy that the city's evaluating right now in terms of launching in the near future, I think that it would make sense that we would evaluate our approach that we've taken in the past and look to up that game somewhat.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on these two items? Okay, see none, if we could vote, all in favor? And that was unanimous, thank you.
Moving on to unfinished business. Item 6.1 is a sales and pricing strategy for 3 ready-to-market properties. Excuse me. This particular one is 826 11th Street Southeast. As you remember from your last meeting, Council, you did vote to separate out and bring back this item, and it's for adoption.
Can I get a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Your worship, I'd ask that we table, this appropriate time, the decision and/or discussion on 826 11th Street Southeast, otherwise known as the Elizabeth Street School, until the first meeting in October, October 5th, 2020.
Can I get a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, we don't, we could vote on this, all in favor? I think that was unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. So that item will be tabled until our first meeting of October. Moving along now to new bylaws. Item 7.1 is bylaw 4625, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to incur indebtedness in the amount of $66 million for the purpose of the 2020 Electric Generation Plan Unit 17.
Council, I move for leave to introduce bylaw 4625 for first reading for the first time. Sorry, yes, first reading for the first time. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Second.
I know that you wanted an explanation. Do you want to wait until a 9.1 when it comes up as new business, or would you want to talk about it now, Councillor Turnbull? Because it is coming up again for the...
Yeah, we can bring, yeah, we can
Okay.
wait till 9.1.
So for first reading, I will call the question. All in favor? That was unanimous. Thank you.
Item 7.2 is bylaw 4633, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to close roads in the city. This one is the portion of 13th Street Southwest.
Your worship, I'd ask that bylaw 4633 be read a first time.
Second.
Okay, it's first reading. I will call the question. All in favor? That was unanimous. Thank you.
Moving along to our new business tonight, which is the Unit 17 electric generation. I'll read out the recommendation here. It is recommended that City Council approve proceeding to Phase 3, construction of Unit 17, which includes ordering the equipment and commencing plant construction, amending the electric generation 2020 capital budget to add $66 million to fund this project through debenture financing, and processing the debenture borrowing bylaw for approval of $66 million to fund this project.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments for adoption?
Yes,
Go ahead,
Mayor
Councillor.
Cluxton, thank you very much. So I wanted to just ensure that council and our citizens, when we look at $66 million investing into our power generation, and that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen and council, is an investment in our electrical generation business unit. We've spent a lot of money and time through Alberta Energy Regulators to get permission to build, which is not an easy thing to get. And we are going to, I'm certainly going to support this bylaw and this building. But I'm not the technical guy here, so I do have our Commissioner, Brad Mains, online, and we have our General Manager of the power plant, Brian Scruton. They're both online, and I think they're going to do is give us an update in a more factual way as to the reason for spending this money and for the investment of this money. So, Commissioner Mains, through our COA, you're good with that, sir? Brad Mains, can I just turn that over to you, sir?
Good evening. Through the chair to Councillor Turnbull, thank you for that introduction. City of Medicine Hat has over 100 years of reliable, dependable electricity generation, transmission, and usage. We operate under a regulated exemption. This allows us, in effect, a ring fence around the City of Medicine Hat, where we're the exclusive provider of electricity. And it's through that ring fence and through that regulated exemption that we've been able to not only provide our residents and businesses with that dependable electricity, but it's also allowed us to grow our commercial base and our industrial base in relationship to that. But this proposal that's in front of Council tonight is not about growing the commercial base. It's about our requirement on that regulated exemption to ensure that we have enough power for our days where our demand is at its highest. It is a regulated requirement. If you'll recall, approximately 4 to 6 weeks ago, we had an interesting situation where we had both two of our generation units go down almost simultaneously. Full credit to our generation group. They were very quickly able to ramp up Unit 16, which is our new build from 3 years ago, and have that on. And as a result, we had uninterrupted service to those aforementioned customers. That is what reliable electricity is, and having the ability to do that. It's our belief, as our city grows, as that commercial base grows, that our demand will continue to go up. It's interesting in a time of COVID and the strains that it's placing on our economies, both nationwide, globally, and here locally, that we would be talking about a future, but we do see a future in electricity. We see a future beyond COVID. We see businesses ramping back up. We see really a return to normal and perhaps beyond that. And it is a preparation for that growth and for those better times that we're talking today. In these times, there's also an opportunity to achieve. There's in times when the economies are down or struggling, things can be less expensive. There can be availability of labor that normally may not occur in more robust times. And thirdly, we have a requirement to build prior to next year, basically June of 2021. We need to get started under our approval from the AEC. So with those three factors in mind, it's our recommendation tonight that we proceed with Unit 17. It will be, if it is approved and built, it will be mirror to Unit 16. They'll be side by side, and we'll be able to benefit from the design and the learnings that we got from the build of Unit 16, which was very much on budget and on time. With that, though, I do want to turn it over to our technical lead in that area, GM Brian Strandland, for additional comments. Brian, if you're available, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Main. Through the chair, Brad summed up everything fairly good there. I guess just for some technical part, this year, as you mentioned, this is for N-1 completely, the rebuilding this unit. And right now our current generation in the summertime is around 243 megawatts. And our highest peak demand during that time is 215 megawatts. Last year we were at about 213 this year already. So we are short around 25 megawatts for N-1 with the loss of our biggest generator, Unit 14 and 15. So we're expecting it to be around 13 to 15% of the time that we'd be shy of that in a year, but that's in the peak times when we need it the most. So I think that's about all I have to offer extra over that what Brad already summarized there.
Perhaps, Brian, you could explain to folks, because I know some of my neighbors say, well, why don't you just buy the power off the grid? There's lots of power there. But it does come with problems for us because we do have an exemption on paying transmission costs around the province that all other major producers of electricity pay for all transmission lines in the province. We do not. So could you explain that, how much we drew down when we had those 2 units go down, and what it was going to cost the city short-term and what would it would cost us long-term. Thank you.
Okay, so when the 2 unit strip that Brad had referred to here is, we drew in about 53 extra megawatts, and we're only allowed to bring in 25 megawatts. And each time that happens, we over and above our 26 megawatts that we have are allowed to bring in, we have to pay a penalty for 2 years. So it's a ratchet up that payment it's substantial. It depends on the more you bring in, the more it costs you. So we only have that our demand transmission service. It's called a DTS contract for 26 megawatts. So, most people have that in the province. If they take too much power, if they weren't expecting it, they actually have to pay more as well. So I'm not sure if that answers all the questions you asked there, Mr. Trimble.
Yes, thank you very much.
Councillor Hirsch.
Thanks, Your Worship. One technical question and then I guess a comment in terms of supporting Unit 17. Brian, how long, if we started on this process and it gets approved tonight, we search out a unit and secure it, etc. How long from now until the proverbial light switch of Unit 17 gets turned on? How much time is that? Are we talking years?
No, we've already done a bunch of the pre-work with the permitting, and that usually takes another 8 months to a year. So we've got that under our belt already with phase 1 and 2. So the actual construction time is about 18 months from the time that you guys give us approval, and we order our engine, and it's here, and we're starting construction within in a few months.
So there is some time in regards to the build, and I guess my thoughts are twofold. One, we are in the electrical distribution business, from which we do have generators that see the lifespan of it ending. So we did have a blackout, if you will, this last little bit. And one thing that people rely on is reliable power. And we pride ourselves in the fact that we're able to keep the lights on. We are in the business. It's just a refurbishment in terms of some stuff that is getting older. But the flip side is that the way my math goes is we've got 20 plus megawatts of available power once 17 comes, to which is an economic development driver in terms of availability for future companies to come to Medicine Hat, set up shop, and have some available power that's ready for them. So I'm willing to support it. In fact, if you do have the companies that drive forward, we will be in the business of refurbishing and constantly, and I don't know what the schedule of events are of our older models and what the next ask is going to be for 18. And I'm very sensitive to the fact that $66 million is not a chump change. So I guess, Brian, maybe you can tell me how long does this, once this purchase is concluded, when would be another ask or on your schedule of retiring generators, I guess?
For the retirement of the generators, that would be based on risk-based inspection. So units 10 and 11 are probably the oldest ones we have, and we would be checking those the boilers out, and that's the main issue that we have with them, and the life cycle. So we're looking maybe 2028, doing another evaluation and see if we can gain another 5 years out of those. But I think after that would probably be towards the end of that as well. So 2032 at the rough outside edge.
Thank you.
Councillor Dominowski.
Well, Your Worship, I think the comments have been made so far are prudent. We are expending $66 million. This isn't a small amount of money. It's a familiar number when it comes to adding another unit. My question's kind of incidental to some of the comments made, and it's not the question the why, but just to help maybe myself and maybe the public understand, when we're purchasing new units or replacing units, we are largely moving towards the GE LM6000. Now, I can appreciate that a lot of our units are in the same fleet, if you will. We have the familiarity of using these turbines. We have comfort, we have trained staff, as some of the background information indicates. My question maybe for the person out there and myself, are we relegated to that because of those things, or maybe there are other reasons that are more formidable or robust in support? But are we relegated to the LM6000 because of our familiarity with it, or is there an opportunity to look at another version that might be less expensive? If I can liken it to buying a new car, I've got to be careful what brand I use to create my illustration here, but buying a Kia or a Cadillac. Both have four wheels and get you from A to B, but is it necessary to buy the Cadillac? Is the LM6000 the Cadillac? Is there an opportunity to save funds by moving and switching to another fleet of turbines? And so if that's a long, exhaustive answer, then we can save it for another day, but it was one that dawned on me. There's the cost implication here, but maybe the back end to that is, are we always having to purchase this one, or is there a lesser cost or least cost alternative?
Great. Oh, sorry, Brian, you going to take that?
If you like, yeah.
Yes, please, yes. Thanks.
That's a great question, and the answer I can summarize fairly quickly. The reason, yes, we can look at other units, and we have looked at other makes of gas turbines, but we've also we've put in a lot of effort. We've got our spare engines that we've purchased for these, so we can actually switch them out. So we don't have to go ahead and buy all brand new parts. We also have all our people trained up to a level 2 GE standard where they can actually do all the work here, because we're in the southeastern corner of the province, and we don't have access to technical people without having many days, if not weeks, delayed to get them here. So we are able to respond right away with the units that we have. Our people could learn that, but then we have quite a few millions of dollars worth of parts in stores or in our warehouses to support these, as well as, like I mentioned, the spare engines to change them out. So that's a big. We went down the path of keeping with GE, but we've actually went out and looked at others as well that would do this job, but most of them are spaced not at the 40-some megawatts for the N-1 that we do. So if we lose one at 59 megawatts, you have to get one that's 80 or someone come in less. So it's not exactly ideal. These ones are, and the size of it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Just supplementary. Is there such a thing as a loyalty pricing or competitive pricing based on loyalty to GE? It's not I guess you could argue it's a preferred source. Maybe they know they have us by the arm because of the things that you just mentioned. And I'm not questioning it. Please know that. It's more kind of testing the waters every once in a while to say, you know what, we're not just going there because we like it and we're familiar with it, because there's a cost. I appreciate to a turbine being down, but these are, you know, as Councillor Hirsch said, this isn't chump change. This is big bucks. And so if we at any point have to make the change, you know, there might be a moment in time where that's a prudent course. And I'm not saying that is today, but again, your explanation is satisfactory, certainly. But I guess the only question I would have is, does GE reciprocate in some form of loyalty pricing?
I'm not sure if you would call it a loyalty. We don't go out when we start negotiating with General Electric. We're telling them we're looking at the field, right? So we don't commit to them until we get down to a deal. And we hammer them down. It's just like we do with any other.
Totally supported Unit 16. Without question, support the purchase of Unit 17. I have a question for Commissioner Mains. Driving to Calgary this weekend, you can see a massive solar field being built near Suffield. There is a number of people in our community, in our province, in our country that see solar and wind being on the brink of taking over energy production, could you comment on what you foresee the outlook for natural gas generated power to be for the foreseeable future?
Through the chair to Councillor McIntosh, we are very supportive of a renewable future. We believe that society is moving that way, both socially and from a regulated perspective. Our assumption and belief is that in that transition period, which we believe will be extended, we do not believe it's short-term and overnight, there will be a very strong requirement for continued backup to those renewable sources. And as that grows, whether that's in eventually and hopefully in the form of battery storage, but in the near term until that technology evolves, it's in all likelihood going to be natural gas generation. We are ideally suited. We're already a natural gas generator, and this plant will also use natural gas as a fuel source. And even in a much more extensive renewable future, this generation unit with the 30, 40-year life, Mr. McIntosh, it's very difficult to predict when and how fast this transition will take place. But certainly when we look at the amount of money that's currently projected, new technology, so it will be as efficient as currently available, both in terms of power generation per energy in, but also in terms of environmental mitigations that will also be in place on it. So this will be as environmentally clean as you can get natural gas generation today. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this?
Just
Councillor
one-
Turnbull?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's really interesting that one of the richest men in the world, Mr. Buffett, down in the U.S., who's very big into electrical generation for his holding companies, has just purchased for $5 billion a gas company to support electrical generation. So he obviously has a pretty good insight as to what the market will bear over the coming years. So like you, Jamie, I believe that we do need to move in some direction for renewable energy. I think that's certainly coming. But for the foreseeable future, there's nothing like 24/7 gas. Wind doesn't blow all the time. Solar doesn't shine all the time. So I think it's an important factor for our city. When we talk about power outages, do we phone the guy at Goodyear and say, I'm sorry, you have to send all your people home because we have no power? Or CanCarb or Methanex or the hospital, although they have their own generator. But we have an obligation both legally, but also as a council to ensure that our citizens never experience brownouts, rolling brownouts that cost business and people's jobs and people's livelihoods. So I think we might be okay for the foreseeable future in natural gas.
Thank you for all those comments. Any other? Didn't miss anybody? All right, if I could call the question, all in favor? And that was unanimous, thank you. Seeing no more business before this council, we're adjourned.